This next one was inspired by a report by the journalist Robert Fisk when he was in Baghdad during the invasion of Iraq. It's called "In the Long Hours of Darkness, Baghdad Shakes to the Constant Low Rumble of B-52s." In a hotel room by the Tigris, a man writes. A jar with a clutch of flowers trembles on the windowsill as the air pressure drops. While out in the desert, soldiers hide in furrows of night. A pale red stain appears. Its penumbra blooms and is extinguished. The man writes about the war, about the smell of burnt flesh along the road north of Nasiriyah, about this dark sound. The air pressure drops again. A tremor runs through the water in the jar, the thin stalks, the petals. Membrane of ice on the windows of this room in Montreal. I cup my hands, peer into the television's blue cave, and see slivers of tracer fire in the desert, missiles scattered like black seeds, a pale red stain on the horizon that pours back into the dark. Through a live street cam, somewhere in Baghdad, the shadows of men. I can hear them. They call to one another in their language, and at dawn, the birds sing. Some of the poems in this book are called what I think of as notebook poems. So I've been interested in other poets and their notebooks and what they write in them. And so this particular one is called Russian Notebook, Moscow 1918 to 1920. And it's specifically about the poet Marina Tsvetaeva, who at the time, this is around 1919 in Moscow, this is after the Russian Revolution. She's living alone in Moscow with her two young daughters, trying to survive. There's famine in Moscow. Her husband is off fighting with the White Army, so she's alone trying to take care of her family. This is a notebook entry from 1919 where she writes, "At 10 o'clock the day is over. Sometimes I chop and saw wood for tomorrow. At 11 or 12 I am also in bed, happy with the lamp right next to my pillow. The silence, a notebook, a cigarette, and sometimes bread." The poem itself is a mix of poetry and prose. Telegraph lines the words sing down at the speed of light, an open vein. Moscow, November 1919. See her there waking in gray light in the attic room of her former house to split wood and start the fire. She is alone in revolutionary Moscow with two young girls to care for. Potatoes boil in the samovar she stokes with coals. Her brown flannel dress singed by flakes of ash and cigarettes. Fingerless mittens. Donated lunch tickets. Everyone afraid for her and her children. So impractical. A copper mess kit and a milk can to collect the free meals from Precious-Thanka Street. House keys strung around her neck. The cold. The banisters and attic beams chopped up for fuel. The exhilaration. On a trip to Tambar Gubernia to study handmade embroidery, she barters matches, soap, and chintz, really rose-colored damask, for 18 pounds of wheat, 10 pounds of flour, 3 pounds of lard, 3 wooden dolls, and a necklace of dark amber beads, which you cannot eat. Her first daughter, Ariadna, Alia, is born in 1912. By 1919, she is already writing poems. Tough arteries, thick tubes flush with life, thin veins of dark red blood that seek the heart. Moscow, November 1918. Narkomnats, People's Commissariat of Nationalities. Information section, in the Rostov's house from War and Peace. Open the door, just a glimpse. Pink walls and desk under chandeliers. Her third day on the job. She's compiling a newspaper archive that no one will read. She paraphrases reports of prisoners of war, the movements of the Red Army, the White Guard, advances, retreats, all copied onto cards. The clippings are pasted onto sheets she captions in lilac pencil. When some clippings are lost, she makes them up. There are lines for everything. A line for milk on Kudrinskaya Street, a line for salted fish on Poverskaya, A line for hemp seed oil on the Arbat. A line into the cellar for half-thawed, half-rotten potatoes. She pulls home on Elya's sled with blue reins and bells. Blue shadowed line the runner carves in snow. Her second daughter, Irina, is born in 1917. There is something wrong. At 2.5, she can barely walk or speak, but she can sing. Moscow, November 1919. Lunch ticket, milk can, copper mess kit. She takes Alya with her to collect the meal. Ties Irina to a chair so that she won't get into trouble while they're gone. A line of hunger, of indifference, desperation, the length of a cord that ties a child to a chair. Moscow, December 1919. She places Alya and Irina in the Kuntsevo orphanage with the hope they can feed her daughters through the winter. She takes refuge in the shelter of the line, its cadences, its nooks and crevices. Joseph Brodsky wrote, represented on a graph, Tsvetaeva's work would exhibit a curve, or rather a straight line, rising at almost a right angle because of her constant effort to raise the pitch a note higher, an idea higher, or more precisely an octave and a faith higher. She always carried everything she has to say to its conceivable and expressible end. Poems are the tracks by which I enter your soul, but your soul recedes and I get impatient. I jump ahead, blindly on the off chance, and then I wait in trepidation. Will it turn my way? Tsvetaeva in a letter to Pasternak. Lines jump the poem's tracks, pitched onto the walls of her room. Moscow, January 1920. She finds Alya deathly ill at the orphanage and brings her home on a borrowed sledge. Poetry is language paired to the line, flesh almost to the bone. Moscow, February 1920. Irina dies of starvation in the Kuntsevo orphanage, 2 years, 7 months old. The line of a neck slender as a dandelion stem. Moscow, February 1920. One last glimpse. Midnight. The lamp drawing close. The notebook closed. Look away. See the stain of words on the shadowed walls.